If you're single and thinking about moving to a major US city, then think again. According to this article, you may need about $139,000 just to live comfortably. Hey guys, my name is Mike, and I'm going to be reviewing an article that I found online that talks about how much money a single person needs to live comfortably in a major US city. To live comfortably as a single person in 99 of the largest US metro areas, you'll need a median income of $93,933, according to a recent Smart Asset analysis. All right, $94,000 a year, that's pretty insane. I'm trying to think, I've been working in the workforce for about 10 years now, and I'm currently at my highest salary so far. I'm at about $80,000 a year. So for this article to say that the median income in basically large cities is $94,000 a year, that is very expensive. I would definitely like to see where their data came from on that. And speaking of data, they actually did provide a link. So after clicking on it, I did find out that it's such a high number because they're assuming that you're going to be saving money and putting away money towards retirement and investments. So they did clarify that in the link that they added. So assuming that you're not saving for retirement and not saving for your future, I would imagine that 93,000 is probably a lot closer to maybe 60 or 70,000. I've lived in a few different cities. I lived in Boston for a few years. I was making less than $60,000 a year, and I was still finding ways to survive. It would definitely be interesting to see what they categorize as comfortable, but I have a feeling if we keep reading, the author will let us know what they mean by living comfortably in a city. Comfortable is defined as the income needed to cover a 50-30-20 budget, which assumes 50% of your income can pay for necessities like housing and utility costs, 30% can cover discretionary spending, and 20% can be set aside for savings or investments. Smart Asset extrapolated the income needed for a 50-30-20 budget based on the cost of necessities using data from the MIT Living Wage Calculator. All right, this is not the first time I've heard of this, the 50-30-20 rule. 50% is going to your monthly income. 30%, if you didn't know what discretionary is like your fun money. So you're putting money away maybe for Netflix, for eating out, Uber Eats, Lyft, whatever. And then 20% for savings or investment. I'm glad that that's how they defined comfortable. One thing I just wanted to point out is the 50% part. So that's going to be for housing, utility costs. Thinking about my own situation, I would not feel comfortable spending more than 25% of my gross salary on rent. So just out of curiosity, based on everything we've read so far, they said the median income is almost $94,000 a year. And of course, that's before tax. So if we do 25% of that divided by 12, we're looking at just shy of $2,000 a month for rent. Even if I was making $94,000 a year, I don't know if I would be comfortable spending that much money. I mean, $2,000 on rent is a lot. I personally am a little more frugal and prefer to live with more roommates to keep my rent costs lower. But I know not everyone operates that way. But yeah, I just can't justify spending $2,000 a month on rent. It just does not make sense to me. Also on discretionary, 30% of your income is basically your fun money. I almost feel guilty when I spend money. I really don't spend money a lot on myself. I probably should. I do enjoy eating out. I enjoy that, but even still, I try to limit myself. Because I get this feeling in my gut when I start spending too much money, but that's just me. I tend to be a more frugal person. Let's keep going. Here's the income a person needs to live comfortably in the 25 US cities with the highest cost of living. All right, this is the fun part. This is where the author actually lists 25 different major US cities. And first in the list, no surprise, New York City at the top, saying it costs almost $139,000 to live there comfortably. Remember, this is being a single person, not being in a relationship. Out of these cities, there's a lot of different cool cities here. I've only lived really in one of these. I lived in Boston. Boston's number 5 on the list. About $125,000 to live comfortably there. Like I mentioned earlier, I used to live there. I was making less than $60,000. I had one roommate and I was paying about $1,250 in rent. So combined, my roommate and I were paying about $2,500 a month in rent, not including utilities. Looking back on my experience, that was definitely not a good decision based on how much income I was bringing in. But yeah, $125,000, you can definitely survive on less than that. I was single for 3 years in Boston, and you can definitely survive on way less than that. The key is to have roommates. I always made a joke, if you live in any of these cities, if you can afford to spend money on an apartment for just yourself with no roommates, then that's when you know you made it. Literally everyone that I knew in Boston had roommates. I don't think there's a single person that I knew that had a place to themselves. So if you have your own place in Boston or any major US city, you are either really bad with money or your income is so high that it doesn't matter. Some other cities on here, Boston was number 5. Seattle coming in at about $120,000. One thing that kind of surprised me is I did not see District of Columbia. Washington, D.C., I did not see that on the list. I would have to go with number 11, Arlington, Virginia. I would say that probably is the closest to DC and represents the current market. Arlington, Virginia coming in at about $118,000 a year. Fun fact, I currently live right outside of DC and I only make $80,000 a year. So it's definitely possible to be single and survive in the DC area without having that high income of $118,000. Another city, Atlanta. I didn't realize how expensive Atlanta was. Atlanta, $107,000 to live comfortably there as a single person. And at the bottom of this list, the author has number 25, Glendale, Arizona. I've never been to Arizona, but hopefully I'll be there one day. I know it's a lot of desert, but yeah, one day maybe I'll visit. So a very interesting list. Let's keep reading and see what else the author has to say. New York City ranks first overall, requiring an income of $138,570 for a single person to live comfortably. In contrast, single people in Houston need to earn $75,088, the lowest amount of all major US cities examined. So I had to reread this a few times, but I noticed that they didn't have Houston on the top 25 list. But I guess the list is only for the top 25 most expensive cities in the US. So Houston is not on the top 25, but it looks like based on what the author said in the article, if you want to live in a cheaper city, Houston might be the route. $75,000 allows you to live comfortably in that city if you are a single person. So you can either live in New York City, paying $139,000 a year, or you can live in Houston and pay about $75,000 a year. New York State, one of the top 3 highest tax brackets for state income tax, and Texas is the opposite. There is no state income tax in Texas. So out of the two, even though I frequent New York a lot, I would have to choose Texas is probably somewhere I would like to live. Although they don't really get a lot of seasons, it's mostly hot down there from what I understand. If you're from Texas, let us know in the comments. What is your favorite part about Texas? Other large coastal cities follow NYC in the rankings. In Los Angeles, Honolulu, San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston, you need to earn $110,000 or more to live comfortably as a single person. All of these cities command some of the highest living costs in the country, particularly for housing, according to the Council for Community and Economic Research. Yeah, out of these cities, I've only lived in Boston, and yeah, they're saying $110,000 allows you to live comfortably as a single person. I would definitely agree with that, but again, I did it with $60,000 a year, so it's definitely doable on a lower salary. You just have to be strategic in how you pay your rent. And they actually mentioned that in this paragraph. It really comes down to housing, as they mentioned. These cities have some of the highest living costs in the country. So I would definitely agree with that. Rent is extremely high in Boston, and I'd imagine in other cities like New York. Honolulu, I can't really speak for that, but being on a tropical island, I would imagine everything is very expensive there. And yeah, San Francisco, very expensive place to live as well. Californians in particular have suffered from a long-standing housing shortage that's worse than the US overall, so it's not surprising that 11 cities from the state are among the most expensive places to live, thus requiring higher salaries to live comfortably. Yeah, California, honestly, where we are today, I don't know if you could pay me enough money to live in California. I don't have a tech background. If I did, I would be working at Google, Facebook, what's the acronym? FANG? Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Yeah, if I had some kind of technology background, I would be working at one of those companies. But because I don't, I would be looking more at like an average salary in those bigger cities in California. And yeah, I don't know if you could pay me enough to live there. Just the way that housing prices are, it's crazy expensive to live there. There's a big homeless population, lots of crime. I don't know if I'd want to live there. I'd rather live in the suburbs, pay less money, and put more of my money towards my future, maybe for saving, investing. Kind of going back to the 50-30-20 rule. Instead of using 30% of my budget on discretionary, I would probably switch that around. I'd probably put 30% towards saving and retirement, and then 20% would be my discretionary. Especially as a single person. I know eventually if you get married, those numbers will probably change. But as long as you're a single person, I think that's definitely manageable, especially for my situation. While employers in large, high-cost cities tend to offer higher than average salaries as a way to attract and retain talent, housing costs can make it difficult to maintain a 50-30-20 budget. In New York City, a third of residents spend half of their income on rent, according to the Community Service Society. To compensate for high housing costs, residents commonly find room elsewhere in their budgets, whether that's skipping out on home ownership or spending less on discretionary purchases. Yeah, spending less on discretionary purchases, that might be one route. But I think a lot of people, it really just comes down to how do you get the most affordable rent costs for living? So I think it's just, honestly, just having more roommates. If your rent's getting too high, get a roommate. If it's still too high, get a second roommate. Still too high, get a third roommate. There's definitely ways to make your living situation a little bit better. I mean, I know not everyone likes to live with strangers, but if you don't mind, some of these inconveniences, then it can really help you save a lot of your paycheck, especially if you're living in a high cost of living area like New York City or San Francisco. Either way, those who live alone pay a significant singles tax in large cities when it comes to the cost of food, shelter, and transportation. All right, I haven't read too much into this, but just talking off the top of my head, singles tax, you're comparing being a single versus someone that's in a relationship as a couple. Singles tax, if you've ever wanted to permanently live with a roommate and split costs, especially for rent, for food, for transportation, getting into a relationship is one way to lower your daily cost of living expenses. I always wanted to do this in Boston. Always wanted to have basically like a permanent girlfriend that could move in, and we could split rent. It would honestly save us both so much money. But yeah, the idea of a singles tax is, you're single, maybe you are dating, but you're not ready to commit to someone to move into your apartment full time. Yeah, if you're paying $2,000 a month in rent, that could be cut in half just by being in a relationship. The flip side of that is if you're in a relationship just for that reason and things turn south, now you're stuck living with that person for the remainder of the lease. So yeah, you definitely have to make sure you're with the right person before you do something like that. But yeah, the article is just talking about being able to split your day-to-day cost of living expenses with your significant other. So transportation, food, shelter. I'm sure I missed a few, but let me know, have you guys ever had the benefit of being in a relationship and splitting your costs? Or have you always had the singles tax like the author of this article said? Let me know down in the comments, and I hope to see you next time in the next video. Thanks for watching.